السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Inshallah, we continue a new story of a new prophet. Today we're going to talk about the story of Prophet Ibrahim. We have previously spoken about the story of Prophet Ibrahim and his son Ismail, but this was only focusing on the part about Prophet Ismail mainly. So now we're going to go to the backstory of Prophet Ibrahim before he has a son or before he even becomes a prophet. It is also one of the great stories, the story of Prophet Ibrahim, and has many lessons. Today we'll do part one of it, which is talking about his childhood and his upbringing, and the big event that takes place in his life, with him becoming a prophet. So inshallah we'll talk about that. And Prophet Ibrahim is, it's called the father of the prophets, and some people call him they call all of the other religions like Christianity or Judaism, so they call them the Abrahamic religions, because all of these prophets, Prophet Isa, Prophet Musa, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Prophet Ismail, they all from the descendants of Prophet Ibrahim, which we'll talk about it later when we discuss each one of the stories, inshallah. So he is a great deal, and he's mentioned a lot in the Quran, and his story is highlighted in many places in the Quran. So the story of Prophet Ibrahim begins with what we're told about in the Quran. The Prophet Ibrahim is growing up in this city, and this city has these people in it that worship idols, and that's their main that's their gods that they believe in. They believe in idols. That's what they do in their daily life, worshiping these idols, praying to them, these big huge idols. They have their entire life revolves around these idols. They attribute everything in their life to the idols. When they want something, they're praying to the idols. So everything is these idols, and that's the society that he grows up in. And as a young child, he seems to be questioning this. Why are these people worshiping idols? It's not making any sense. They're making statues with their own hands, and then they worship it. And Prophet Ibrahim was extremely bright, and he had a beautiful way of calling people to Islam, which is we're going to speak about in details. The father of Prophet Ibrahim was a very special person in this town, because he was a maker of idol himself, right? So you could imagine the household that Prophet Ibrahim grew up in, with the father who makes idols, right? How was Prophet Ibrahim feeling, growing up in this house, and how difficult that must have been with his father. His father doesn't just believe in idols, but that's his livelihood. That means a lot to him. This profession here, this making of idols and having people to continue believe in idols, is important to the father of Prophet Ibrahim. And Prophet Ibrahim growing up, he's questioning, but he's not confronting people yet. At one point, he goes and he asks his father, what are these statues? Why are we worshiping statues? Why are we praying to these things that don't benefit or harm, right? And his father, of course, does not like what he says. These are gods. You don't speak like this about them. And Prophet Ibrahim continues. He tries many arguments with his father, and he tells him, Prophet Ibrahim tells him, don't worship the shaitan. The shaitan is the one trying to deceive you, trying to make you worship these idols and make it appear to you as something good, right? Worship Allah alone. He's the one that created everything. Don't worship these idols. And some of the people who worship idols through the years, believed that the idols were like a cell phone, like they speak to Allah through the idols. So some of them did believe in Allah. They would speak to the idols to ask Allah for things, the one God in the heavens. but they would use the idols as the means to get to Allah. Some, of course, believe in idols as the gods, you know, the only gods or whatever. So it was deviant. Shaitan had a lot of traps, a lot of ways to make this legitimate to them, that it's okay to worship these idols. It's not a problem. It makes sense. It's normal. Even though to us, we say like, how could the person make a statue and pray to it? How is that possible? How does that make any sense? But that's how the tricks of shaitan, you know, when he play tricks on people. So anyway, Prophet Ibrahim is trying with his father all kinds of ways to get him to stop with these idols, or questioning why you're doing this. Like, does this make any sense? How could you be doing such a thing? This not making any sense, and so on. And his father, of course, refusing, and you know, he's getting really upset with him, right? It gets to the point that he tells Prophet Ibrahim, if you don't stop, I will stone you. I'm going to kill you. If you do not stop talking to me and telling me about the idols and saying bad things about them, I am going to kill you. So it gets really bad with him. Then Prophet Ibrahim, he goes on and he starts speaking to the people as well, you know, calling them, like, you know, tell them, why are you worshiping idols? How are these idols benefiting you in any way? How are they helping you? They can't do nothing for you. Why can't you see that, right? They're very helpless. They don't have any power. They're powerless creatures. They can't do nothing to you. These statues that you make with your own hands, how can they help you? And he goes around from a crowd to a crowd, calling people, talking to people. But everybody, most people are, they're not liking, you know, what he's saying. They want to follow their forefathers. And this had always been the main problem for people, which is what following what their fathers did, what the people of the past did. But everybody did it. The people of the past did it. You know, how come, you know, how come if it was bad, why did they do it? It cannot be bad. It had to be good because our fathers did it. We trust our fathers. We trust our grandfathers. So Prophet Ibrahim wasn't really getting anywhere with these people. So he tried a different tactic with them. The tactic was, you know, I'm going to use an argument, hopefully, that would help them. So he looks to the sky and he said, you know, I see a star. He sees a star and he's like, okay, maybe this is the God. You know, it's a shining in the heavens and so on. Maybe that is the God. But then he looks and he sees the moon. Say, okay, maybe that's the God. That's the God that made everything. That's big, right? That's a bigger, you know, it's a bigger than a star. That's maybe the God. So the morning comes and then the moon disappears. And then the big sun shows up. So he's like, you know, how could this be a God if it disappears like that? So it's like, and the sun is bigger. So it's like, maybe this is the God, right? Making a point to these people, right? Like, pay attention, right? And then later on, the sun also disappears. So then he said, what? This cannot be the God either. If this was the God, it would have remained. It disappeared, right? And the moon came. This disappeared and the moon came. So then he said, I turn my face to the one who made everything, right? The God who made everything, to Allah, right? The one that I cannot see, the one who created all of that, the sun and the moon and everything else, right? And then he started calling people to that, you know, try to giving them some sense, but he wasn't getting anywhere with them. So Prophet Ibrahim, when he didn't really get anywhere, he decided to use a brand new plan, right? But it was a dangerous plan. But Prophet Ibrahim is very smart, right? And he wants to make a point to them. So he waited until the day of celebration. They had a day of Eid, a holiday, a special holiday where people go out and celebrate and have fun. So he was asked to join them, but Prophet Ibrahim declined. He didn't join them. And he stayed behind. And most of the people of the city went out. And Prophet Ibrahim took his axe and then he's heading for the idols, the place where the idols sit, right? This temple area where they have all these idols. So he goes to it. It's like the masjid for the people who worship idols. But then instead of a masjid where people pray to Allah, they pray into idols. That's where he goes. He takes an axe and then he goes there. He breaks the first idol He breaks a second eye roll. He keep breaking all of these eye rolls. And then he did something very clever, right? What did he do? After he broke all the eye rolls, he puts the axe on top of one of the eye rolls, right? Like hanging on his neck or shoulders, right? And then he leaves. So then the people come and they find the eye rolls all broken. So they're questioning, who could have done such a thing? Who could have done such a thing? And then he said, it had to be this young man called Ibrahim. He's the one that's been talking about the idols. It has to be him. So they bring Prophet Ibrahim and they ask him, hey, did you do this? Did you break our idols? And Prophet Ibrahim says, no, I did not, I'm sorry. He did not say, no, I didn't. He said to them that, why don't you ask the biggest one of them? Why don't you ask the biggest one of them? Let him answer you. Okay, let the biggest one of them answer you, because he seems to be the one intact. He's still good, right? And he has the axe. Maybe he did it. The bigger one, he's the one who did it, right? He has the axe on. So then they say to him, how can we ask him? Right? He doesn't speak. They don't speak. Right? So he's like, it's telling them, go ask the idols. Ask the idols who broke them. Ask this big one. He did it. He broke all of them. Go ask him. They're like, what? How can we ask him? He doesn't answer. He doesn't speak. Right? He doesn't hear. He doesn't hear anything. If we speak to him, he's not going to hear us. And he won't speak back to us because he does not speak. Right? So then Prophet Ibrahim is asking them, so how do you worship these idols if they don't speak or hear anything? How could you be worshiping them? How could you believe in them as your gods if they weren't even if they can't even protect their own selves from breaking, how could they help you? How could they help you? And this is very interesting because one of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a similar situation like this, right? And his name was Amr ibn Jamuh. And this companion, he used to work. He wasn't a companion at first. He was an idol worshiper, and his children became Muslim. They accepted Islam, and he wouldn't. He didn't like. He didn't want his children to become Muslim. He didn't want to be Muslim himself. And they asked him a few times to become Muslim, accept Islam, believe in a Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, and he rejects, he refuses, and he's happy, content with his idols. And every time they kept doing something with him, they wanted to make a point. They would take his idol and put his idols in the trash for him. So he would go look for them, keep finding them in the trash. Right? It's like, who did this? Who did this? Somebody did this. Who did such a thing? So anyway, returning back, clean it up. In the beginning, what they did, they would just drop them to the floor, drop the idol to the floor, and make him upside down and make him look messy. It's like, who did this? Okay, and then he would fix it. Again, it would happen. Again, it would happen. And this, the last time, is when they put the idol in the trash. They took the whole thing, put it in the trash, and just disgraced him. So the man goes out and he finds his idol in the trash. He realized, of course, he was a smart guy. That, what's wrong with me? This idol, if it were to do anything, like, it can't even protect itself from getting disgraced like this. How am I worshiping this thing? How many times am I gonna defend this idol and try to clean it up and fix it and put it back and stand it up? And he felt ashamed of this and he accepted Islam. This is foolish. I can't worship these idols anymore. So that's a similar lesson the Prophet Ibrahim was trying to teach the people. And after the idols were broken, they're asking them, and he's saying, that's the biggest one. So anyway, they realized that this had to be Prophet Ibrahim. So they decided, we have to teach him a lesson. We have to destroy him. He has to pay for what he did. And what they did was they built this big, huge fire, right? Big, huge fire. Some of the scholars said this fire was so big and so intense that if birds were flying above this fire, they would burn. The fire was so big to this extent. Allah knows best if that's true, of course. And then they bring Prophet Ibrahim, and he's going with them. And then they about to throw him into the fire. There are some narrations that says that Angel Jibreel alayhi salam, he came to Prophet Ibrahim and he asked him, do you need assistance? Do you need help? And Prophet Ibrahim says, confident, and he says, from you, I don't need any help. And from Allah, He knows about my situation, right? Meaning I trust in Allah. He's going to take care of me. He's very calm. And they throw him in the fire, again, hoping what that they can teach him a lesson, right? They're hoping they can teach him a lesson. So when they get thrown in the fire, now obviously the fire burns. That's the rule. Allah created the fire to burn, right? That's the rule of fire. Allah created it like that. But Allah, the same way He created it, like He commanded the fire to burn, that's why it burns people. He created the fire, he commanded the fire to not burn Prophet Ibrahim. And it didn't. He got thrown in it and he did not feel a thing, right? And Allah commanded the fire to be cool upon Prophet Ibrahim and to not harm him in any way, to not harm him in any way. So after he was placed into the fire, he wasn't feeling anything. Later on, Prophet Ibrahim were to say that the time that he spent in the fire was the best time of his life. He did not really feel anything, right? And some of the scholars, they say that he spent so long in the fire, up to 40 days in the fire, and he wasn't getting burnt. And you can imagine the entire town coming out to see Prophet Ibrahim getting burnt, right? This is a big event. Imagine even today, like if you tell, oh, somebody did something bad, so we're gonna set a big fire and burn him. Imagine how people will be interested to watch something like that. So many people went out to see this big punishment happening to him. But then to their amazement, after some time that the fire, was put out and Prophet Ibrahim walked out, nothing happened to him. As if nothing happened to him at all. And what does this teaches us here? This is, again, many great lessons in this segment of the story of Prophet Ibrahim, right? The trust that he has in Allah, right, was great, right? That he's willing to go to be thrown into the fire and he has no problem. He knows that Allah will take care of him. Allah will take care of it, right? That Allah is in control of the fire, right? Even though he sees fire, but he believes in Allah more than the fire. That's trust in Allah. This is a very difficult thing to do because every day, bad things happen to us. Bad things happen to us. And one of the things that makes things difficult for us to deal with these bad things is that we feel sad about the things that happen. We lose something that we like, or we don't get to do something that we wanted to do, or we lose someone that we love very much. And we feel sad and upset, right? But if we trust in Allah, we would know that Allah is the best planner. Whatever Allah decides is the best thing. We trust Him. We trust Allah. And our loyalty is only to Him. And this is Prophet Ibrahim here. His loyalty wasn't even to his father. It was to Allah. It wasn't to his father. Even though his father is his father. But he was willing to be the enemy of his father for Allah. That's a difficult thing to do. Could you imagine? Right? That's a difficult thing to do. There's still people that do things similar to this until now. Muslims that just because when they become Muslims, their families don't want to see them anymore. Don't want to have them as their children anymore, and they want to disown them. Similar to what happened with Prophet Ibrahim, but of course his situation was very severe. Right? His father said, "I'm going to stone you. I'm going to kill you." To this extent. That's how much he had a problem with Prophet Ibrahim, his own son, right? But he had a problem with what he was preaching. But again, that did not change Prophet Ibrahim. Also, we learn from this story, it doesn't matter. The number doesn't matter. Prophet Ibrahim was alone in the town, the only Muslim calling to Islam, and the whole town was against him. He didn't care. It didn't matter to him. And we talked about this a little bit last time with Prophet Noah. right? But here is more manifested even more with Prophet Ibrahim. Even farther in the story, you're going to see more. Prophet Ibrahim is a loner, right? In a big part of his life, he is the only believer on earth. That's big because all of us need support. You need somebody to be with you, to do the thing that you're doing, right? Imagine if you're in a room where you are the only person standing and everybody's sitting, where you're the only one sitting down and everybody's standing, right? You'd feel odd. You would start to question yourself, right? You would lose confidence. But Prophet Ibrahim, he was on the truth. So he did not care. He held to the truth and he did what he was supposed to do. And he carried on with what he's supposed to carry on. He believed in Allah and wanted to follow Allah's path no matter what, right? Also, we'll learn from here to have wisdom when you're calling people. You see how Prophet Ibrahim was very smart. The way he's calling people to Islam to make them think. He's doing many different things, right? It's like the star that he did, like how he was going through the stars and the moon and the sun, how he broke all the idols, and he's like, okay, well, I want you to ask the big one. And they're like, oh, we can't ask them. They won't answer us. They don't speak, right? And he wanted to make that point to them that, oh, look at you. You can't even ask your own idols. Your own idols can't even defend themselves. If these are real idols, they would at least be able to stop me from breaking them, but they were not able to, right? So these are not real gods, right? And the real God is none of these gods that you are worshiping here. And then, you see here that in a very smart way, he's teaching them, right? So the way sometimes we go about calling people to Islam, we need to have a good plan, right? A good plan, and we try to call them to Islam in a smart way, right? In a way that would be really make sense or really drive the point home for them, right? When people have seen seen this, like the trust in Allah, like how he trusted in Allah, get thrown in the fire and nothing happened to him, of course made people question, what is this? How come the idols are not defending their own selves? He didn't even get burned, right? So it made them question everything. And that's exactly what he wanted. He wanted them to question their beliefs, right? And just by calling them to Islam, it wasn't working. So he tried different ways to call them to Islam, right? Like, this way did not work. Let me try a different way to call them to Islam. Not the way I want to call people to Islam, but the way that would work for people when I'm calling them to Islam. Also, we see here that how Prophet Ibrahim never gave up, very persistent, trying all kinds of ways with these people, patient, right? The beautiful patience you see with him, just like you see with Prophet Noah and many of the other prophets and many of the ones to come, right? You see this pattern always, the trust in Allah, the patience, right? He didn't give up. He's like, they're doing too much difficulty. I'm just going to leave. These guys don't want to listen. I'm just going to leave. No, he continued on trying and tried this way and tried that way and tried this way, different ways. Speak to this group and speak to that group, speak to his father over and over again, that kind of thing. Also, we see the care for Prophet Ibrahim to his father. He loves his father, and that's why he wants to talk to him a lot. He wants to call him to the truth, right? And that's true love. If you really love somebody that is related to you, the person would call that person to Islam or to have them do the right thing, because that's a true love. True love is that you want the person to be a good person, to do that which will please Allah, to do the right thing, right? That's the true love. And Prophet Ibrahim continued to do that with his father, right? To show him love through his actions, calling him to Islam and asking him to stop worshiping idols. And we're going to see later on, even after his father dies, he continues, he wants to make dua for his father. He wants to ask Allah to forgive his father, even though his father died as an idol worshiper. But Prophet Ibrahim loves him, and he's hoping that that he can do something for his own father. Of course, it does not work because he really died worshiping idols. But that's his commitment to his dad. His true love was manifested in the way he was calling him to the truth. Anyway, inshallah, let's pause it here. Next time we're going to speak about the second part of the story of Prophet Ibrahim. We'll move on from this part, the upbringing and his young days. We'll move on to the second part. The story of Ibrahim is a little bit bigger, than some of the stories we went through before. But inshallah, we'll continue, as we said, the second part next time. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله